Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked, and today I'm doing my top 10 games that I used to like. This was actually suggested by some people who had watched my other top 10 of games that I was wrong about, where I went over games that I initially didn't like and now either see that they are good or that they're good for other people, like that they're just not inherently bad. This is actually the reverse of that in games that, yeah, obviously games that I used to like and now that I don't anymore. And yeah, this is a depressing list because obviously no one likes to have things that they used to like and later on come down the road that they're just like, man, that's just either a really bad game or just fell off our radar. So yeah, here are 11 of them, of games that, man, they just had so much potential, and then over time just ended up being really bad. No, not really bad. Probably 5 and up are games that I actually view as inherently bad games, and then 6 and below, I guess, would be games that just aren't for me or that I just don't feel like playing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with an honorable, or if you prefer, a dishonorable mention at number 11, which is Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, which some of you may be surprised on, because whenever we initially did our run-through and review of 3rd Edition, I think we ended up liking this one better than 2nd, but as time went on and I played it more and more, there was just something missing about the overall feel of the game, that it just doesn't have that same kind of suspense and tension that 2nd Edition had, where 2nd Edition you had so much replayability and you were pretty much in Arkham, the city of Arkham, going back and forth between the different locations and having those story events as well as monsters moving around the board, and with expansions you can go to Innsmouth or Dunwich and then also have those massive world events, and those just felt more core to the Arkham lore. They felt basically what Eldritch Horror is what Arkham Horror was, 2nd Edition. But 3rd Edition, they just kind of, yeah, they streamlined it, but they changed it in such a way that, like, it's kind of just boring. You can't do, like, the same action multiple times. So, like, if you really need to get to a location to stop a anomaly or anything like that, or to kill a monster, and it's just one space away from you, well, sorry, you can't get there unless you have money to move extra. It's just weird. And they have the story deck that they initially started in the Fallout game, where you basically have a deck of just stories that, as the scenario goes on, you pull cards from this deck, and then that's story stuff, and those are quests and even side quests that you go on. It's okay. I mean, yeah, they have the location decks that basically is what makes the Arkham and Eldritch games great. I don't know, it just doesn't quite have that same suspenseful feeling, and you don't really get the same replayability either because of that story deck. Eventually you're gonna, I mean, you pick the scenario while you've done that scenario, whereas the first Arkham Horror, or the 2nd Edition, there was none of that. You played the game, and through playing the game you had a different experience versus just what the scenario brought. So I don't know, it's, yeah, 2nd Edition was clunky, but it had that same horrific feel of, like, okay, are we going to be able to overcome this? It's just 3rd, but it's still the honorable mention, which means, I mean, I would still play it. It's just not as compelling, and then I'd much rather play Eldritch Horror. So that's my number 11, Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. My number 10 is a game that we initially started doing a series for, but it just became extremely cumbersome to even continue doing so, and we ended up not really caring for the dice system or the sheer randomness and the slow level up system, which is Folklore: The Affliction. Folklore does have a lot of things going for it. Like, it has its unique, like, European folklore. It has the unique characters, and then the way that you can level up with them, with basically picking two sides of, okay, well, if you're going to play the illusionist, you're going to play one of these two classes of that. And you do level up by gaining XP, but the game just felt slow in some parts and then just too random in others. Like, for example, to go into a city, yeah, you have to travel, so you have road events, but that's literally all you're doing. In a 4-player game, you're rolling, like, or you have your movement, so you go 1, 2, 3, up, okay, road event. All right, now, all right, it's your turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, up, road event. It was like, what was the point of legitimately just having this map, this overblown map, where it did nothing except just track a little bell piece that moved along the road? It's just like, it should have just been more streamlined. Like Gloomhaven, for example, you have road events, but only if you go from, Gloomhaven to back to the place, and you just have one road event. It's like, yeah, okay, great, yeah, you still get the road event as if you are traveling, but you aren't literally moving a piece just to draw multiple road events and be like, okay, well, we did that. So that was just kind of cumbersome. And then whenever you get into the actual scenario, you pull out this map, and then place all the minis, and then you just kind of, you just have a quick skirmish. And then they also have the skirmishes, which you don't even pull out the map, you just roll dice and see what the skirmish guys do, and then, you hit them, and that just removes let's say there's 6 of them, you just go down from 6 to 0 till you win. It's just not, at this point for dungeon crawls, they have to be streamlined or be extremely rewarding to feel like an RPG. For me to invest my time in them, and this did neither. It was like, why are we doing this when the stories aren't even really that great? They don't quite even connect. Yeah, it is a story, but like one scenario to the second scenario, it's just like they're different events. So at the end of the day, even the percentile dice wasn't fun, because it's like, it was weird. It's like, okay, to hit them, they have a defense of 53. Okay, so I guess I'll roll. Oh, I got a 47. All right, guess I missed. Oh, wow. Okay, our defense is 11, because it takes 20 fucking games before you can even get a decent defense, and you have to spend all this money to get items to hopefully help your defense. And it's like, okay, well, they're always hitting you, and you're barely hitting them, so it's just not fun. It doesn't feel balanced. So cool theme, but cumbersome game. So with decent minis at best, like they all come warped in some way, and I don't know about you, but I don't like having to boil my minis and then icing them to get them set. So props to them though on making a mini tray. I will give them props to that. All right, so that was my number 10, Folklore. My number 9 is a sprawling game that I had played multiple times, and I was like, this is a lot of fun. And then I played it again a few years later, and I was like, this isn't as fun as I remember. And that is Zaya Legends of a drift system, whatever the subtext is, Zaya, which is basically a pick up and deliver, roll the move game that just has a bunch of mechanics thrown in. And I don't know, like, whenever we were playing this for the channel, I'm sitting there and I'm like, this just feels extremely random. And also has a bunch of weird mechanisms in how you collect resources, where you basically can move throughout the map, because you essentially will go from one location to gather resources, to then find a planet, and hopefully find a planet soon and nearby that actually will sell those or will buy those resources. It's just, I mean, yeah, you can fight. So you can actually have your ship destroyed, either through random events of trying to go through an asteroid field, or if you don't search ahead of time, you can just launch right into a sun and then just immediately die. Yeah, you're not out of the game completely, but you don't start from where you were, so you are penalized if your ship does blow up. You have kind of the polyomino system of doing ship upgrades. As you gain money, you start at a level 1 ship, then you can go to 2, then 3, that has more cargo to where, or it has more spaces for you to hold cargo, or to get, different types of weapons or shielding. I don't know. It's just, if I want to play a big sprawling space game, I'm gonna do Twilight Imperium. Yeah, it's extreme. It's way longer than Xayah, but at least I have absolute control over what I'm doing in this game in Twilight Imperium instead of Xayah. It's just, it felt like I had a whole bunch of stuff to offer, but none of it was pleasing to me. And ultimately, I ended up selling it. The only really cool thing about this game is that all the ship minis are painted, and you actually have a ship for each of the different player boards of the ship. So that is really cool. But I mean, I know one of my first experiences was the fact that it's just like, okay, well, this planet will buy this type of resource. Oh, and 2 spaces away are, the resources. So basically, you just go back and forth, mine those resources, come back, and then, gain points that way. Now, I know in the expansion they fixed that, but that's still an inherent problem if you don't have the expansion. It's just, you're hardly interacting with other players, and if you are, you're going out of your way to do so. So you know that people are going to be, okay, well, they're going to be the mercenaries in this one. They're going to be coming after us. Yeah, you have the outlaw system, but I've never really liked that in games, because that basically means, okay, one person's playing outlaw, so therefore someone else has to be this role, whether they want to or not. Otherwise, that person who's playing the outlaw is just going to win because they're going to go unchecked. It's just, there's so much that Xayah says it can offer. Like, I always hesitate on the sandbox game, or the title, where it's like, oh, sandbox game, but yeah, you don't really want to play these few things. You kind of want to do these if you actually want to have a shot at, doing well in the game. So, I don't know, Xayah just doesn't quite do it for me as it once did, so that is my number 9. My number 8 is in a weird position, because while I would say it is a good game, it is overwrought and expensive for what it offers in later games. So, and that is Star Wars Rebellion. Now, this game, when it came out, was raved about for so long on being Star Wars in a box. That was like the tagline. You couldn't say Star Wars Rebellion without saying it's Star Wars in a box, which is true. Like, it is that. However, just like the movies, this game just doesn't have a lot to offer people later on. It's, once you've played this like 2 times, you've seen everything. And all right, well, that's the game. Like, all the mysticism and like, oh, what can the rebels do, or what can the Empire do? That's all out the window. And it's just, it's not fun anymore. Like, the rebels, what they do is they basically pick a place to hide. They pick a planet, out of any planet, to hide. Obviously, unless they're being extremely cocky, they're going to pick planets that are further away from where the Empire starts. You don't have to, but you can. And then they basically amass, troops, and then, complete quests, because it's basically points, until the, the point track is like the rebels move up, and then the Empire moves up. Or the round track, sorry. Because the Empire wins if they find the rebels and blow up their planet. But, for instance, some of the things that the characters can do, because you can bring in any characters, all the rebels have all these characters, and the Empire has all these characters that have benefits and special abilities and cards that'll go into their hand for them to use. It's like, once you see it, it's just like, all right, well, that's what you guys can do. And they supported this game once with the Rogue One expansion, which fixed the combat and did a pretty good job at fixing the combat, but still didn't really offer a whole lot. Like, Obi-Wan, when he's out, he can have a special card that when he dies, he actually can come back, and he can offer the rebels an even bigger reward. But it's like, okay, well, obviously I'm not going to ever target Obi-Wan because I know that you have that ability, and that's just not fun. The Empire, once again, they're slowly amassing their Death Star, and they They basically find planets and they can blow them up, and that's cool the first time you do it. And then even if you find the rebel base, then the rebels can still leave before you get a chance to actually blow it up. And yeah, you can bring in a second Death Star. So now the Empire can, reach a lot more of the planets to potentially destroy them or to catch the rebels. I've personally felt that the rebels were actually they were in favor of winning, just because of that the quick objectives and the quick goals that they can actually complete, whereas the Empire has I need to find you, and if it takes longer than it should to find the rebels, then pretty much you're wasting your time. Yeah, I don't really hear anyone talking about this game anymore. Granted, it's been 3 years at this point, 3 or 4. Did this come out in 2016 or 17? Can't remember. I want to say 17. I want to say it was 3 years ago. Oh, it's 3 years old at this point. And yeah, you play it. It's a 2-player game, and it's Fantasy Flight. And don't get me wrong, it's fun the first couple times you play it. But I remember having a friend, he always wanted to play this game, and I'm like, why? Maybe I'm just not as big of a Star Wars fan as everyone, but I just don't get it anymore. So that's my number 8, Star Wars Rebellion. My number 7 is a game that was recently, it basically has just dropped because it just had so much icing and no cake on it that I don't want to play it anymore, and that is Tang Garden. Tang Garden is a game where you and other players are building a garden together and trying to amass coins, which are essentially your points at the end of the game, and have the most coins before anyone else, or at the end of the game. But the problem with this game is they have they rely heavily on their artwork and their 3D terrain, that it's just ooh, look at the table presence, but when you dive into it, it just doesn't have the solid mechanisms. And what I mean by that is, you basically, on your turn, you do 2 things. You can either play a tile, or place a decoration. Well, playing a tile, that's fine. You can see all the tiles that are available for you to place, and you can look at the board and be like, oh, okay, and try and get some coins that way, or offer a decoration spot. Then you can either do place a decoration, where depending on how many face-down tiles there are, you get to draw that many cards. You draw at least 2, plus for each tile that doesn't have a face-up one, and there's 4. So for example, if people have placed 2 tiles, that would mean that there's 2 face-down tiles, so you would draw 4 decorations. Well, there is the very high chance that you can draw a decoration that you cannot place. And okay, well that's your turn. So you wasted your turn, and then now other people get to place tiles, or now they get to attempt to draw from the decoration deck and hope that they can place one. It is extremely unfair and unlucky to have that in a game, and I know that the designers have basically come out with a retcon to that, but I don't care. I feel like that's an inherent problem with the game, and that should have been brought up before you made people buy your game. Because it's pretty critical if you can't do anything on your turn. And even if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to plan ahead, I would like to place this tile that does have a spot for you to place, I don't know, a tree or whatever, which are worth points. Well, then someone sees that and they're like, oh, thank God, okay, now there's a spot. So they're going to try and get a decoration. And if they draw a tree, then they're like, boom, thanks, okay, you planned that for me. It's like, all right, I guess you gain nothing. You have the chance of gaining nothing on your turn, whether you place a tile or you draw a decoration. And at the end of the day, yeah, you can look at the game and be like, this is very pretty. I very much like the way this game looks, but it just doesn't have any substance to it. So I don't really like this game anymore. So that is my number 7, Tang Garden. My number 6 is a game that either no one talks about because probably it is not intuitive to players at all, and that is Pixel Tactics. Now, this is a game that is from Level 99, which I tend to love every game they make. BattleCon, Millennium Blades, even Pixel Tactics at one point, and some of their other smaller games. But This one just became extremely cumbersome to try and play. Like, at any point. Like, when you make a game, I mean, and there's like 5 expansions to this game that has a shit ton of cards, but every single card can do like 5 to 7 things on it. It's impossible to teach. And how you play this game is you essentially, it's 1v1, and you have cards that depending, in I think it's a 3x3 grid. So, like, you have the forefront of 3, the middle, and then the rear. And depending on where each card is placed, they do something different. So it's like, oh, if this card is placed in front, it gives a +2 defense. If it's in the middle, it gives this is probably a card that does this. If it's in the middle, it gives +1 attack. And if it's in the back, you can attack, range or whatever. But there's also traps, and there's also just static passive abilities, depending on if you place them as a trap or something. In theory, it's really cool. I mean, because you essentially attack down lanes, and you have your champion that you're trying to protect. But this game's impossible to teach. Like, and I understand that Level 99 likes to make these high variety, ultimate replayable games like BattleCon and Millennium Blades, but both of those games are still succinct. If I hand you a character in BattleCon, I can be like, this is just what this character does. That's it. In Millennium Blades, yeah, you have, a billion cards, but they ultimately, you can teach them the rules, and people can be like, oh, okay, like, I've played in a Magic tournament before, or I've done a drafting tournament. I understand how this works, and you pick a theme, and you kind of go that theme, and you have multiple rounds to hone your deck. Pixel Tactics, you can't do that. Like, you can tell them the rules, yeah, but then they have to look through every single card and be like, oh god, where do I even want to place this one? How am I going to be efficient with all these cards that all do something different depending on where they're placed? It's just, this never hit the table, and it never would hit the table because there's better games out there for that. I'd much rather play 1v... Because you can't even really get into the mind of your opponent either in a 1v1 game, because you have no way of knowing what they can possibly place. Because you can't be like, okay, like in BattleCon, for example, the 1v1, I can look at the 2 cards and be look and be like, okay, here's all of his special cards. Okay, what does he have out? All right, so he can't do these. Okay, so here are his options. Now, what am I going to try to do to counter his most likely option? Yeah, you can't really do that in Pixel Tactics, and the fact that they made so many expansions just made it even more tiresome to even attempt to play. So, yeah, that one was a shame, because whenever I would get it played, I was like, man, this could be so cool. But at the same time, I was also kind of like really into BattleCon a lot more, and they had characters from that world into this one. But yeah, it's just, this game's impossible. So, that's my number 6, Pixel Tactics. My number 5 is a one versus many game that I believe I have given it every fair shake of trying to either get some enjoyment out of it or to see if it's balanced, because I really like the world and I do like the mechanisms, and it's a really cool theme. But at the end of the day, after we've played it, like the past couple times I played it and, rebought it to be like, okay, well, surely it can't be that bad. It just always fell flat, and that is The Others. So The Others is a game where one person plays one of the 7 deadly sins, and the other people play heroes. But each person, while they do control a certain hero, each person has a stack of, not each person, the whole hero team has a stack of people that they run through. Basically to say that, oh, by the way, these people that you're playing as, they will not survive. They will eventually become corrupted, or they will die through damage. So you have this stack of people that you can play through. And it's such a cool idea. You have... there's never a game where you play one of the sins, but it's not just the sin you play. You also have, corrupted minions, and you have... The sin player has its own different types of minions. So, for example, Wrath will have Wrath, kind of one of his agents and then his like beast minions, but then he can have corrupted nuns, or he can have policemen, or like kind of just the citizens that are also just kind of fodder for the heroes. But what it came down to for this game was that the heroes couldn't ever do enough to actually stop the seven, or one of the sinful player. Now, that's in my experience, and it's just like, whenever this is a true blue fucking dice chucker, like handfuls of dice where the sin player and sometimes the hero players are just rolling a bunch of dice where it's like, okay, I get to roll 10 this time, or 15, and boom, okay, here are my hits, here are my misses, okay, your dice cancel out these, okay, well, I still have 8 hits on you. And it's like, alright, well, I guess he's dead. I mean, that's not fun. And I actually feel like that the dice mechanism in this game slows it down because it's not succinct. You have so much dice that you have to then roll and then basically like allocate and organize on the different faces that are there. It's like really, really like, I guess back when this came out, that was cool. But for me, I want one versus many games to be balanced, and I want them to actually like have some strategy behind them instead of just a dice chucker. I don't mind dice, honestly, but whenever that's the game, when you're basically like, all right, now let's piece all this together, and I don't know why I'm doing this because I'm easily gonna kill whatever you're putting in front of me. It's not fun, at least to me. So much potential, and I have bought this game. I bought the full. Actually, I had the full pledge once, sold it all, and then I was like, maybe we just played it wrong, or maybe it just like maybe over time I'll like it more. And then so I bought it again, organized it all. Oh, and the organization of the game is just a mess. There's absolutely no way to store this game because it's just all minis, which are pretty good, and I like the art. But yeah, whenever it falls flat again, when the other players who are not playing the sin the entire time feel like they have no chance, and they don't, then that's just not fun for the group. And I've played one versus many games where it's like the other players, because I'm usually always the one, it's like they're like, yeah, you know what? I never quite felt like we didn't have a chance. Like, it's like, yeah, their backs are kind of up against the wall. They see the horde of minions, but they're like, no, we could still do this. We can actually complete the scenario. But in the others, that was never the case. And I remember first playing this before I owned it, and I actually wasn't playing the sin player, and I was like, this sounds incredibly unbalanced. And we were playing it, and I'm pretty sure the guy who was playing the sin, the one, was pulling his punches, because not only does he have a shit ton of dice and a shit ton of minions, he also has a bunch of cards that he can play, and the heroes get items. I mean, yeah, they have special abilities, but so does the sin player. It just doesn't work. So that's my number 5, The Others. My number 4 is a game that I actually ended up playing at Gen Con. It's by Arcane Wonders, and I played it, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. But then I bought both of the boxes, and they didn't support the game once they released this, and it felt extremely weird, and I once again felt it was unbalanced. Once again, it's a 1v1 game, and that is Critical Mass. Critical Mass has a few problems with it, and one of these problems is that they released 2 box sets with 2 mechs in it, and I'm pretty sure that they intended for those 2 mechs to be the ones that fight each other, instead of being like, oh, I have 4 total, so I can just mix and match on who they fight. I don't think that was the case, because I've done that, and it feels like, wow, these were not meant to fight one another. So, yeah, Critical Mass is a 1v1 play, or it's a 1v1 game, and you have one of these mechs that you basically will have cards that you are slowly upgrading to have better attacks that are unique to this mech. And I will say a prop to the game is the fact that, yeah, the mechs feel completely different, but each mech does have some of the same cards, like a dodge or a shield or a refresh to get cards back, because once you play cards that are like attacks or stuff, you can't do them again until you get the cards back. You also have one big special ability that you have to basically charge up to then use it. The thing that I don't like about this game is, one, the presentation. The fact that you have two box sets, and it's kind of like, well, can these play? Like, can you combine them? Because this one mech seems extremely overpowered against someone from the other box sets, and vice versa. The other thing is, like, since it's 1v1, one of the cards is a dodge, and most cards go into a discard pile once you use it, except this card. This card goes back into your hand, and there is nothing stopping you from actually just playing that card over and over to keep dodging. And because if your opponent plays an attack card, regardless of if it hits or misses, it was played. So it's like if someone plays a laser beam attack and I dodge, well, that laser beam card for them is gone, but the dodge card is back in my hand. It's like, okay, well, they have a hammer. Okay, so I'm going to play my dodge again. Oh, they played their hammer to try and damage me, because you only win by removing all the green cubes from the 4 different levels of your mech. And it's like, oh, well, okay, I dodged that. So then eventually they're going to have to do a refresh to just get those cards back. And I don't feel like that's fun. Like, you can unlimitedly dodge the entire game and essentially either just do a stalemate because no one wants to play with you. And I understand that that's not ideal, but the fact that you can do that is not fun. And it's one of those games where it's like, okay, well, I have my attack, you have your attack. Okay, well, there's a priority, so you hit me, now I'm stunned, therefore I don't get to hit you, but my card still goes into the used pile. That's not that great either. I mean, BattleCon has that too, but BattleCon, you can't really dodge unlimited times. You eventually, you have to take that priority into account. And there's one mech in this game that has a shield, like a force field, that is basically the enemy has to do damage to that shield before it can do damage to any of the other, options. And they have a card that is almost a must. You don't start with it, but you can just get it almost immediately, that recharges that force field. And it's like, okay, so you basically have an unlimited force field that I have to do damage to, because you basically have 4 columns, 1 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage, and 4 damage, but you have to deal that much damage in one go to remove a cube. So most of the time you're going to get rid of the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s before, and in that order. So, but the force field mech, it's like, yeah, you have to deal damage to it. So if someone deals 4 damage, they can't pick the 4. They have to deal 1, and I guess, okay, I'll get rid of a 2. It just never felt balanced. And, like, I remember playing this game the last time and the person kept dodging, and I'm like, why am I even attacking? What's the point? I have no benefit to even try and hit you. Not because you beat me in priority and stunned me from doing so. That's better. But you just keep dodging and all my cards are wasted. We're not really fighting. So, yep, that one was a huge disappointment, but I remember playing it at Gen Con in the first couple times within the box sets, and I was like, yeah, this is fun. Each mech is different. Then I played better 1v1 games, and this one just didn't work. So that's my number 4, Critical Mass. My number 3 had so much potential, but at the end of the day, my taste must have changed because I don't want to play this game again, and that is Village Attacks. Now, I've done a run-through for this one. I've actually done a run-through for all of these. Oh, except Pixel Tactics. I did not do a run-through for Pixel Tactics. Someone mentioned in my run-through for Village Attacks that, oh, well, you have to treat this as a beer and pretzels game. All right, fair enough. However, a beer and pretzels game should not be $300. So, no, I don't give that a pass on. You just have to not really care to me. You just have to just chuck dice and hope. It's like, no, I don't want to do that for a game that's this expensive. And the other thing is that in a beer and pretzels game, it's just, yeah, you're supposed to be drinking, you're supposed to be having fun, but they treat this game as if it's not that. Like, you have all of these minis, you have all these different scenarios, a pretty horrendous rule book, but not only is the game extremely cumbersome, where it's just like you have so many villagers that you just constantly have to keep grabbing and kind of moving, and if they have if they have if they have multiple passes they can go, you have to flip a coin for every single one of them. So if they're in the middle and it's like, oh, okay, well there's 10 there. All right, guess we have to flip the heads. He goes there, tails they go there. So flip a coin for each one of them and see how they go. It's just like, oh my god, I don't want to do that in a fun, lighthearted. It's like just fucking grab them and move them. Who cares? Oh, and then wow, more hunters. Okay, so yep, let's keep grab the bases and put them on. And all right, now it's our turn to do something. Okay, let's roll dice and see what we can do. Oh wow, I can't attack a single one of them. That's cool. Can I use my abilities? Nope. All right, I guess I can defend and move. That's all I can do. No, this game is luck at its worst, because they have mitigation in the sense that out of like 5 dice that you get to roll, 5 or 6 dice you get to roll. If you roll 3 of the same result, then you get to re-roll those 3, and yeah, it can stack. Like if I roll, there's 3 defense, but it's like, well, I don't need these right now, so I'll re-roll those. And it's like, okay, well, now I have 2 of each. Okay, well, I guess I can't re-roll. And kid you not, I've played this game where a person did not roll a single attack. And he didn't roll enough to use any of his abilities. So it's like, we have 0 chance. Like, it's just so dumb. And I also don't like the fact that their campaign is literally just play 10 games of village attacks, and the first 5 scenarios are to teach you how to play the game. So really, you have 5 true scenarios where it could have some depth and not slowly bleed in some shitty-ass rule. This game had so much potential because of its unique theme. The fact that you don't play the heroes going in, you actually play the villains, and they have a lot of cool villains like that are in folk tales and stories that are never touched in any game. But man, this game just needed more dice mitigation and a dice chucker, because I don't want to sit there for a 2-hour beer and pretzels game and just not have a chance. Like I'll literally just play a drinking game if we're gonna do that. I'll play any other beer and pretzel game that I have that didn't cost me an arm and a leg like this one does. Yeah, it's just super disappointing, because the first time I played this game we had a lot of fun, and then subsequent playthroughs it just got worse and worse. And then the one we did for the run through, it was just like, either this is a really bad scenario and you don't have that many, or it's just a bad game. And I'm going to chalk it up as both, that they didn't really playtest all the scenarios. Not all of them are fun. And it's a cumbersome game with cumbersome mechanics where you have to rely on hopefully you roll well. So, and those games are not for me. I like dice, but I like having choices with my dice. I don't like dice where I just roll to see what happens. So that's my number 3, Village Attacks. My number 2 is a game that I ended up doing a weird series for, in the sense that we played every story that came out, and by God, by the end of it, we hated this game. But we started liking it at the very beginning, and that is Time Stories. Time Stories it started off so good with the Asylum and the Marcy case, and then got weird with Prophecy of Dragons. Had a big, long, wet shit under the mask, and I believe the Arctic Expedition was the 5th one. No, it wasn't the 5th one. It was like the 6th one. But you can definitely tell Space Cowboys was just making just garbage, putting the Time Stories name on there just to sell different modules. This one was all over the place, because they were never consistent. They had, these first scenarios were good, probably what they only should have made, but then they're like, oh wait, we can do whatever we want, people will buy these. And most of them are bad. Like, Prophecy of Dragons everyone likes. We were like, I guess for the story it had its promise, but we were like, man, this is kind of weird. And the fact that they had their overarching story that went absolutely nowhere, and the payoff at the end was the most insulting thing. It was Game of Thrones Season 8 level of insulting to the people who stuck through this whole thing. For them to basically use that as a plug for their new Time Stories revolution was... I mean, they might as well just killed everyone who bought this game. I mean, and like killed their family and been like, hey, by the way, this is also what we did. We sold you a shitty game. We've been selling you a shitty game for a while, but at the end of it, we also slaughtered your whole family. So, hey, check out our new Time Stories Revelation, whatever it's fucking called. Yeah, this one is, I despise Time Stories. Now, I will say, at the time this goes up, my review of the Time Stories Revolution, the Hadal project, is going to be up, and I'm not talking about that. That actually was surprisingly good. However, the bar was so low that they had nowhere else to go but up. But the dice, the time mechanism, the fact that you had to fucking, if you ran out of time, start all over, who's thought? I hope that person's fired, because that was the worst idea ever. Like, in theory, it's fine, because you're like, oh, we're done. Okay, well, I know we wasted time on doing this, so now we know where to go and what to do. But in a game that should take an hour, maybe 2 hours to complete each module, it should not take 6. Like, because you will inevitably run out of time. There's nothing you can do about that. You will never complete a module with the time that they give you, and they plan that in certain modules. However, it's never just like, oh, okay, we'll pick up where you left off, but, ding you here, like it is in Revelations. Blah, blah, blah. You literally start all over, and it's like, we never did. In every run-through that we did for Time Stories, we're like, okay, yep, we did that, we're going to keep going, because that's horrendous. Imagine every game that you played, if you lost a scenario, like, you start all over, but there's no meat to it. Like, it's no longer, like, you do the same thing, you see the same thing over and over, except maybe you don't now, because you're like, oh, well, we wasted our time helping this person, he gave us nothing, we'll not do that, and we'll save one time. I hate Time Stories. And they just fucked it up. So bad, so many times that it just became a game that, yes, Asylum and Marcy Case and even the Arctic Expedition, which in my opinion was the best one, and hell, even the Prophecy of Dragons, it's like, yeah, you have promise here, and it just worse, and then it tanked into an insult to the players of this game. So, that is my number 2, Time Stories. And my number 1 game that I used to like, and now I don't. Should be no shock to anyone if you're a fan of the channel, but if this is your first time, definitely go check out my 3 discussions on this game. One where we do it a couple games into the series, then about 10 games in, and the final one, which was a 2-hour long discussion video, and that is Kingdom Death Monster. I hate this game, and I hate this company for a variety of reasons. Go watch my discussions. Even the one where, because they went from a 10, everyone gave it a 10. Then 2 people, like one person gave it a 10, then a 9, and then Kat and I were down to a 7 by the second discussion. And I'm going to tell you my ranking. Definitely go give it, because I give all the reasons of why. But now this is out of 4, and as time goes on, this ranking probably actually goes down. But at the time of that 2-hour video, I gave it a 4 out of 10. And even the person that was in that series, who for every game, and one who went out and bought everything for himself, he is even coming around and seeing the problems that Adam Poots and company are doing to its consumers. This is a bad publisher, this is a bad designer, this is a bad game. Not only do they constantly keep changing, because what people are buying for Wave 3 and 4 is constantly being rehoned and changed and shit added, and it's like with zero communication to any of the people. At this point, it's a mental illness of the people who fully, completely support this game and this company, because they're just like, they spent so much money on it. They probably went into fucking debt. Oh shit, I didn't pay my mortgage or pay my rent so I can back this game on Black Friday. Well, it has to be good. They're in serious Stockholm Syndrome and serious denial, because what else are they going to do? They've been waiting 8 years before their shit comes out. I hate it. It's the only redeeming thing about this game is its cool theme, but at the same time, even that's shit on, because you don't have anywhere where lore is actually like set. It's people who are kind of trying to parse it. It's like almost like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or those From Software games, where it's like if you just play it, you don't really know what the whole story is, but people can read item descriptions and then they can come to a congruent, okay, here's the story and here's the lore of the world, but at least all that's there. In Kingdom Death Monster, that stuff isn't there. You have to rely on hearsay from what people who have probably worked on it have said, and then piece it, and hopefully that, okay, well, I guess that's what this creature is, or that's what this nemesis is about, because they barely give it to you in the game. And oh god, and then you also have to put the minis together, and then it's like, oh hey, okay, but also we have all these pinups and shit for you fucking weirdos who want this game. There is some serious, like, I hate it. I hate this game so much. I'm sure Adam is a nice guy, and he is a nice guy. I talked to him at Gen Con a couple of years ago, and it's not anything with him as a person, it's with him as a designer that irks me in such a bad way. Like, I refuse to give this game any credit anymore. I'm an advocate that this game should not exist. But obviously it's not up to me. People really like fighting the same monster over and over in hopes that you get the one resource you need to make one item for one person in your party, who that person will inevitably die, like, not through really any choice of their own. It's either a random die roll on a random hunt phase, or through age. If you want to keep using him, he will eventually retire. He won't die, he'll retire. So you can't play him anymore. Yeah. Wants to be an RPG, but it can't. Your people, your fighters are resources. Like, you have a population thing where you have to keep track of, and that's how you lose, is if your population hits 0. You eventually just buy, I mean, obviously every weapon is not good. It's like, oh, I want to do this. I want to play with a whip and shield. Yeah, you probably shouldn't, because that's not going to be good. You want to go, sword and shield, or you want to go axe. Or nope, sorry, it's bow. Bow and luck build will slaughter anything, because not a lot of people or nemesis are like resistant to luck, like to crits, really. Man, was this just a dog shit series. And if you watch our series, you can see my decline in real time. You can watch it started, everyone being into it, and then just me personally just tanked down to where I actually did a pros and cons list over why I don't like the pros of the game and cons of the game, of why it's a 4 out of 10. And probably as time goes on, it's just going to be a 3 or a 2. And I can honestly see, if I'm in the right mood, giving it a 1, because at times this game is not playable, at least if in the way that you want it to be. And it's all tied to that price point. I was able to get everything for this game, including the stuff that isn't out yet. You probably have to spend around $2,500 to get everything, like pinups and models that don't do shit, but you just want to yank it to. You probably need about $3,000. Actually, some of them are even sold out, so you probably have to spend more, so around $3,500 for a game that is sheer randomness. And is a sloppy fucking game. Go watch my final discussion on this. I go into a lot more detail on why this game is what it is, but that is in a nutshell my thoughts on KDM at this point in time. So, Those are games that I used to like, but I don't anymore. Let us know, let me know what you think of these games in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.